So Nelson Mandela was a sellout and a traitor, and he betrayed the people of South Africa. Well, that's what my teacher used to say back in high school. Now, at the time, we never really understood what he was saying. Everyone was like, sir, how can you say that, this and that? But obviously, years later, I've seen this argument play out on social media and online so many times. And I can kind of see where they're coming from. So here's the argument. Basically, after the apartheid era, Nelson Mandela was obviously released from prison in 1990, and South Africa had its first democratic elections in 94. Some people are saying that ownership of wealth, land, mines, and so many businesses and companies in the private sector didn't change hands or suddenly become black, quote unquote, black, after 1994. And basically, that Madiba took a compromise, or made a compromise rather, to leave the wealth in the hands of the minority. Some people say, obviously, the white minority. And basically, what we saw in seats of power was people of color, but real power still remained with the people who ran the country before 1994. And what upsets people is that a select few of the black elite are the ones who benefited off this compromise and system. I'm talking about the politicians and their close friends. So obviously Madiba himself and his family were kind of well off, and a few businessmen that had close ties with politicians, people like Patrice Motsepe, who's now, I think, the richest black man in South Africa for sure, Tokyo Sikwale, and so forth. Some people even say President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's the current president of South Africa, is more of a businessman than a president. But on the other hand, some people say that Madiba had to take this compromise, otherwise the country would have gone into a civil war. It was on the brink of a civil war and bloodshed, violence, and so many people expected this to happen and thought that this would actually happen. So here you go, two sides to the coin. Some people are saying the country would have been worse off had Madiba decided to go the route of revenge and fighting back and so forth. But it's just unfortunate because 30 plus years after the whole apartheid thing and the first elections and so forth, South Africa still remains one of the most unequal societies. You see it every day. And to be honest, it's not getting better. In fact, things are becoming worse when it comes to things like employment, public health system is failing. Local mayors and councillors are not even taking care of their respective municipalities. So, yeah, guys, here you go. So, was Madiba a hero or was he the villain of the story? There's also a third perspective, like what Julius Malema said. He said Madiba did what he had to at the time. He was under house arrest after being released from Robben Island. The man was old, the man was tired, and probably he never had the juice in him to go on fighting and so forth. So, for him to settle for a compromise where it's peaceful and we can just move on and build a country is a thing that he had to do. And that the fight should be taken with the youth of today. People should decide that they won't stand for a corrupt government, because now it's no longer about black or white. It's more about, the elites, the haves and have-nots, and corruption and so forth. What do you think?